This computer is a fair bit newer than the first two I reviewed, and it's also remarkably different. It's a Psion machine from 1989, and it's called MC400. There is also a 200 model with a smaller screen and generally less interesting. Psion is a British manufacturer, or was, don't think it exists anymore, which mainly made PDAs, or rather handhelds with keyboards, which have a few of. They are very good. They haven't made any other machines of this size. This is a full-sized laptop, and if you look at it, you might already see some oddities perhaps, but it looks pretty much like your standard laptop. But it is in fact a lot different inside in various ways. First, this is completely solid state, so just like the Olivetti from '83, which is a few years older and very simpler looking and very simpler in actuality. But this also uses solid state memory, has no hard drive, and runs on AA batteries. Although that's not its primary way of being powered, because it takes 8 batteries, which is a lot, although it claims to run for 60 hours with them. But it can also take a proprietary battery, rechargeable one, and the 8 AA batteries actually fit in a case that is made to resemble the rechargeable battery it comes with. It's actually better these days to have a case for normal batteries, because it would be hard to find an original one still in working state. I can see that there seems to be a problem with the screen, but now it went away. Perhaps it was just unused for some time and having trouble. This is a graphical interface, and not the Geos type that just looks like one, but it actually is one in pretty much every way. And this computer has a touchpad. It is sometimes claimed to be the first touchpad. I don't think that's true. There have been some others, although I forget which exactly. But it is perhaps the first touchpad that was combined with an actual graphical interface of this sort, with Windows and all, like Xerox type. And it is not quite like modern touchpads. It is also much worse, let me say that for a start. The fact it's on top of the keyboard instead of below it is just perhaps a detail, but a more core difference is that this is not relative motion, but if I actually touch the top right corner, the cursor will move on that corner. Oh, you can see that. But here, see? Well, if I touch the bottom left corner, so you have to start touching, make some pressure, because it is not quite as sensitive as modern touchpads at all. You need to press down, and you have to guesstimate where you're going to be touching. Then when you have found the place you want to click, you just do it like on many modern touchpads by pressing down. This is pressure sensitive in a mechanical way, and this is also a bit clumsy, to be honest. Unfortunately, this unit in particular came with a problem, which is the fact that this touchpad comes up on this side, and perhaps that explains some of the particular difficulties in using this touchpad. Perhaps other units work better, but I have no idea. An interesting touch is that you can see these lines and they are reproduced on the screen to give you a visual cue that this will control the screen. I can show this is full windowing system because, for instance, see the cursor has changed into a shape suggesting I can move the window. Mind, this is from '89, so graphical interfaces were not new in any way. You had them on Macs, Amigas, and you already had versions of Windows, even though they weren't very commonly used. But this was the one with the touchpad, while most were mouse-based, and perhaps one of the few, I won't say the only, but I don't know, that worked on a solid-state computer, aside from handhelds, which Psion itself was making. Okay, unfortunately, another thing, this unit isn't very fortunate, and it comes with a pretty old version of the firmware. See, it's up even to double click. You need to be very precise. Probably easier to just press enter after selecting the icon. I was saying this unit isn't great because it has an older firmware that makes it impossible, aside from having some bugs and lacking some features compared to newer ones. It makes it impossible to install many interesting programs that could be installed from cards, like a word processor and the spreadsheet, I think. They just don't run, and the firmware isn't upgradable, so if you were going to buy this, you'd have to make sure you find a seller which knows which firmware is going to be shipped to ship you the machine with. There is a text processor, that's what it's called, but it's a text editor, really, not a word processor in a fully fledged way. But in an interesting side, certainly the keyboard, which is what this series is about. This is a really nice keyboard that I like. Perhaps it looks a lot like a very standard IBM compatible keyboard, and it kinda is, but it is certainly the high end of standard IBM compatible keyboards. The keycaps come off. I'm not sure I want to try that now, but actually that's probably the reason why this touchpad got damaged, because when I was shipped this machine, some keycaps had fallen off. I think it was very roughly handled in shipping as the posts often do, and they were touching this part of the touchpad very roughly, I'm afraid. The keys weren't damaged in any way, but the touchpad seemed to be. This keyboard is mechanical, certainly, like the other two computers I showed, the Epson HX20 and the Olivetti M10, but it feels very different, and I like it best. There is I don't think I can show this on video, but while the other two feel like you're just pressing down the key and the key makes some resistance, but without giving you any feedback on when it's been pressed down enough to register a stroke. This clicks before reaching the bottom. Here I'm touching the key, and here it starts registering, but I can take it down a little more. So let's try typing the usual things. I feel I can actually type faster on this one. I'm far from a great typist, but I almost didn't make mistakes. Well, when I showed the other two keyboards, I made a lot, you can check. Also, this is not surprising because it's a much older, much newer computer, but the cursor keys are arranged in the modern way, so that's certainly useful to type and edit, especially in a good way. And okay, aside from the keyboard, there are these external keys. Task lets you switch from one window to the next, much like Alt Tab on most operating systems today. Then you have keys that are normally found on the main keyboard, like Delete, Home, and Page Up and Page Down, and you have a key for LCD contrast, which makes the screen darker or lighter, but you need to keep Shift pressed. It has these two functions. There is also a record key, which suggests you can record audio, but you actually can't, and you need an external in this you can insert cards in these two slots. Now with this key, no, I don't remember, no, this is just on. I want to turn the computer off because to use the cards, to remove the cards, it's better to have it off. I could use this one, which is empty, but you can see this on the video. Well, this one, well, I just open it. This one contains half a megabyte big flash card, which is actually the same kind of card proprietary to Psion, which is used in its handhelds of the third generation, Psion 3, 3A, 3C, 3MX and others, while it's certainly not a compact flash or anything compatible with later Psions or machines from any other brand, aside from certain machines that were made to be Psion compatible. Here's another card. This is a system disk. You need this to be inserted when you boot, although it isn't the firmware. It is needed, but it doesn't contain all that the system needs to boot. So it's a bit like the arrangement in an Amiga, where there is the Kickstarter, which is a non-modifiable ROM, and a startup disk, which is only actually needed when you first boot the machine, because when you turn it off, assuming I at some point remember how it's actually turned off, perhaps the only way to actually turn it off is to do it in software with this really, honestly, not very comfortable touchpad. And I will also have to go back to the system window, here, off, and that's it. You see from this thing too that this computer is a bit Mac-like in that it tries to do everything in software and as a solid state. As I was saying, you don't need to boot a game from the system disk just to power the computer back on, because this will keep the information in RAM, and they will stay there until you remove the batteries or they run out of juice. But there is no backup mechanism if the batteries do run out, so you do have a card to save the spare data. The Applications this comes with are basic but useful. Aside from the text processor, there is a clock, calculator. The calculator also looks like a bit like a desk accessory in early macOS, in that the window, if I remember right, is a bit different and stuff. Very simple, not even a drawn calculator style interface, just typing. And there is OPL, which is the basic-like programming language that is typical of Psion and was later used in Symbian phones, which were popular until not too long ago, like before the iPhone and Android. So this is a very long-lived language, although not very well known at all. The file system is very DOS-like, with 3 drives, and actually I think there would be more drives if I added cards, and 8 plus 3 file names. No directories, I think, so you just save files in a single general directory. You see, this touchpad takes a lot of getting used to, and it probably isn't great even when you are used to it. This word processor has styles, but if I try to change the font, for example, let's try a mono-spaced font, the entire document changes, and this is just to edit it while seeing it in a different way, not really to format the document. I can make it bold, and that's pretty much it. Perhaps you can see the text better now. It does have this ruler counting the spaces, so you can use this to create a printable document in a reasonably usable way. However, when you print, you need to have a correctly driven printer, which is not so easy, because one thing that made this computer an utter failure on the market is that all the interfaces are quite proprietary. So aside from the cards I already showed, there are these 2 openings which show, well, actually the parallel port seems standard, so perhaps that one is normal. This is a serial port, which is RS-232, but the connector isn't very common for that at all, while this is a hole for add-on modules, like the one that acts like a sound card to make that record button we saw before useful for something, while this contains batteries. Now, by removing them, I will erase the memory contents. You see, lots of batteries here, and if I had, which I don't, the version of this which is actually a solid battery, it would have more contacts to also be able to be charged by the computer itself. I don't remember if I even have a power supply for this, but anyway, I use it from batteries when I want to. I will just type a bit again, because I really like this keyboard and the way it sounds and feels. Well, I'd also like to make the window bigger here, but this touchpad is really very fiddly. Oh, one little secret is that if you want to reset the computer, It's almost invisible, but this part of the speaker, I think this is a speaker, comes up, and there is a tiny coin battery here, which is of type, just so you know, which is of type 1620. So this is not, unless you have a manual, this is not easy to guess. Okay, this probably only comes with this keyboard layout, although it's possible that software could change that, but to be fair, this computer has really little software that isn't what comes as default, because it wasn't popular at all. It was an excellent idea, in my opinion, to have a graphical interface on such a solid-state computer that didn't need any kind of mechanical parts and could run on batteries for a very, very long time. You didn't have these on any Windows computer or anything similar, which really were even shorter lived on batteries than most laptops are now, which is quite something, because most laptops now aren't all that great. There are some settings here which are very bare bones. I think the newer firmware actually had some rather heavy modifications which make it more useful for various things. And you can sometimes find the cards with software like the word processor and spreadsheet for sale. They aren't cheap. I am not sure you can install that software unless you use the cards themselves, but it's probably possible if you have a Psion, another Psion like the small ones, the handhelds, to write software on a standard card and then use it as a software card. So that's it for now. I hope if you buy this you get a better unit, because this one, I don't blame the seller, it was okay, but due to the firmware being old and oh, check this out, this part with all the connectors, actually itself an expansion module, so you can replace, see the connectors are here, now I can open it without this being inserted. You can replace it with other kinds of attachments. You could if they existed, but perhaps there are a couple, no more than that. This one here is just empty, because as I told you, it's a hole for a further expansion. So it's a very modular unit with these two batteries that can be replaced with either penta batteries or its own. Other connections, by the way, here, perhaps let me try to open that. Well, perhaps I won't show you this. There were other things. It has I don't remember what's in here, but it has a few surprises. The card slots again contain 2 for each, so 4 slots, which is quite a bit. Compare that with an SD card slot, which most computers now have 1 or at best 2 of. Okay, so this is the best keyboard in my opinion that I have. Next computers might be interesting, but they don't reach this level of keyboard beauty.